Board of Wildlife Commissioners back to order. Record, it's May 14th. And let's start this with the Pledge of Allegiance, led by another one of our veterans up here, Mr. Stockton. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks, sir. Welcome, everyone, here to our, quota setting and a few other items on this meeting today. Nice to see everybody here. The record sent, we have a roll call of the commission, please.
Chairman Rain.
Present.
Vice Chairman Lentz.
Present.
Commissioner Caparo.
Here.
Commissioner Calvin.
Here.
Commissioner Howell.
Here.
Commissioner Macbeth.
Here.
Commissioner Schrum.
Here.
Commissioner Vogler.
Here.
And Commissioner Wallace.
Here.
All right, can we have a roll call of County Advisory Board members? Anyone here present for County Advisory Board, please stand up and tell us what county you're from and name.
Gil
Yep.
Counter, Carson Advisory Board. Candy Randy, Elko.
Paul Dixon, Clark.
Bill Meyer, Lion. Glenn Bunch, Mineral.
Jim Janae, Lion. Eric Sheets, Jesse Latin, Churchill.
Rex Flowers, Washoe.
Glenn Copeland, Washoe. Shane Moore, White Plains. Joe Graham, Perkin County.
Okay, in Perkin County. Excellent, and welcome. So I've got a good chunk of the counties here represented. Might even have a couple more before we get into the quota settings. And one thing I'd had, members asked me if I wanted to move a couple items on the agenda, to move item 35 and 36, swap that with item 34, put quotas after those two. Is that what I'd heard? In order to do that, we'd need a suspend the rules, so it was one of those.
What was that again? I didn't.
I had a commissioner ask me a little while ago if we wanted to move item 34 after 35 and 36.
Right.
I want to take them first. But to do that, I believe we would need to suspend the rules to amend the agenda.
I moved to suspend the rules.
Second.
To amend the agenda to move item 34 behind 35 and 36, is that correct?
Yep.
Does that everybody understand the motion? All in favor of
We
that?
have some discussion.
Yes, go ahead.
We approved the agenda yesterday. I didn't see any reason that we needed to move those items. I would not be in favor of moving those items at this point.
Make the motion. Could you just explain?
Yeah. Motion, right?
Yeah. Why are we wanting to move them? What's the thing? Could you just explain to us why we were wanting to move them?
I'd like to get the two commission policies out of the way before we get into the big game discussion.
Just 'cause it'll take a while. And that would bring us down almost to the end of the agenda as soon as we got done with the quotas. Does everybody understand the motion? Yes, go ahead.
What, is it a 2/3?
Yeah. 2/3 vote. All in favor of amending the agenda to move item 34 behind 35 and 36, signify by stating aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Hey.
No.
So motion, let's see, we've got five in favor, 3 opposed. Motion fails.
You got to vote.
You can vote, though.
You can vote.
And that would make it exactly 2/3. It doesn't matter one way or the other. I mean, that's fine. Let's stick with it. Let's move on. Would probably be better the other way, but member items announcements. Commissioners may present emergent items.
Till 8 o'clock.
No action may be taken by the commission. Any item requiring commission action will be scheduled on a future commission agenda. Next, county advisor, okay, so what do we got? Good member items first. Anybody have any member items they'd like to bring up this time?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go ahead, Commissioner
I
Howell.
got an email, and I think Suzanne's
I
having
can
some,
go print it right now.
to give everybody a copy. It's
basically something that we touched on yesterday about the, some of the heritage money going for raven control. And it's a pretty long little statement by some biologists stating how much harm ravens do to the sage grouse. And because sage grouse is sensitive, everybody's calling it endangered. It's not there yet, but it is sensitive. I just thought it'd be something we could pass out so everybody could get a little bit of understanding about, it's not just one or two members of the commission that feel like it's a problem. It's a lot of other people. I think they're gonna give us copies of it.
Okay. Other member items, yes?
I had a question. Is that the one I received from Utah
Yes,
about their,
yes.
okay, yeah. I also got another email, and I guess it was handed out, but from the Bureau of Land Management, Ely District, and I guess everybody got that, but where they're supporting departments, antlerless cow elk hunts, and I guess that was handed out to everybody this morning. That's the two items I had also.
All right, yes, Commissioner Cavan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Basically, just a comment. I've had probably 4 or 5 calls and conversations with folks that are upset about us moving the cow elk hunts later. So I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention. I'm sure we've had other comments, but that's been my biggest concern from sportsmen over the last since the last meeting. Maybe the bears.
Fair enough. Anybody else? Seeing nothing, we will move on to item 32, County Advisory Boards Management Wildlife. Do you have any member items that come up in CAB meetings that didn't get discussed? There's a couple people that weren't here previous days. CAB member items, go ahead. You had a CAB, something came up with CAB?
Yeah, I just, we're going to discuss, but I wanted to bring up to the board when we get to quota setting is one of the things that was asked by several members of the public at the Clark County Advisory Board meeting was several years ago, and I don't know how many several, this is probably before I got, NDOW had recommended that the early late seasons be at about an 80-20 split. And right now we're running at about 95-5, where the late season tends to be a trophy thing. And they wanted me to bring up and ask the commission as we're going through quota setting stuff to think about whether or not that split is the right split and whether or not we're stressing the deer at the end of that system. And have we set it correctly? And if we went back towards more of the NDOW recommendation, would we be stressing the deer herds at the, the bucks during the rut season, the late season? So I said that I would bring it up to you guys as you're deliberating. And I figured we get into that, you may get lost, but I wanted to have that in the back of your minds as we're going through other things before we get there, okay?
Okay, fair enough. Other CAB member items, come up your meetings. It's not on the agenda? All right. Let's close that and move on to item 33, public comment. Persons wish speaking items not on the agenda. You have 3 minutes. Anybody? Go ahead. Mr. Flowers.
Morning, Rex Flowers. This did not come out of our cap. That's why I'm putting it under public. And I'm going to use 2 commissioners, name by name, as examples. Yesterday we heard from Mr. Vogler. It will not be derogatory, okay? It is an example. Mr. Vogler yesterday said he'd received a email with concerns over I can't remember the subject, but you didn't know what to do with it. You were afraid to pass it on to other commissioners. And I know in the past, Mr. Lent had received some emails asking to go back to a split season, and Commissioner Lent had even been at our quota setting, and we had not heard it at that time. But if you were to get these comments, these emails, and forward those on to the department, you would not be contacting another commissioner, but you would be, the department would send those emails out to the cabs So each cab could have that information readily available for them for when they go to make their decisions, and that way we could come back better informed and maybe have a different decision than what we make at our cab level. So it would be helpful if we could get your correspondence in advance. Okay? Thank you.
Vice versa.
Yes, I send all mine in.
All right, any other cab comment, or public comment, excuse me?
Chairman Rain,
Yes,
along what Mr. Flowers just said.
go ahead, Commissioner Vogel.
Would Mr. Stockton maybe give us a kind of a 2-minute tutorial on what we can and cannot do? Because, I mean, there's enough tension that an open meeting law suit would be no more fun than anything else. So what are we required when we get an email? We can't send it on to the other commissioners. If
Okay.
we send it to them, aren't we still participating?
Okay, let me, Mr. Flowers' suggestion would be fine under the open meeting law. Under the open meeting law, you can't get together a majority to debate an issue. So if you're just forwarding information to the other commissioners, that's not a violation of the open meeting law itself. Now, if somebody hits reply all and says this is a bunch of hooey or whatever like that, that's violating the open meeting law, because that's beginning to debate on the issue. But if you're just forwarding something, then that's not a violation, especially if it's something somebody else said without any comments, then that's not a violation of the open meeting law. The danger is, and why we discourage that, is as soon as somebody hits reply all, you have violated the open meeting law.
Especially
That-
if it was commissioners' comments that you're replying.
Right, yeah, if you add some, well, usually if you're going to reply, you add comments.
But you could just, if you get the email, you read it, you could send it to everybody without violating the open meeting law, without making any comment whatsoever?
Sure.
But if I wrote on there,
What do you think?
what do you think, then that,
Yeah.
that's in violation.
Yeah, if you write, what do you think, then that's encouraging
Right.
that, well, I don't know if it's encouraging a violation, but it's not really a violation until somebody tells you what they think. Okay, so you're aiding and abetting a violation of the open meeting law, I guess, I don't know. But yeah, once there's communication back and forth, that starts the debate, that's an open meeting law violation.
With a majority of the
Majority.
commission.
Right.
So if you ever get therefore, if you ever get a communication from another commissioner, that's the ones you really got to worry about.
Right, don't reply to them, just think about it.
Just think about them. Or definitely don't forward them.
Mr. Chairman, a
All
follow-up.
right. Yes.
Just one quick follow-up. If it goes through the department first, then the department sends it out and says, what do you think? It's okay? Is that what you're saying?
No.
Department's just gonna-
No. When Suzanne gets them, she just forwards them to everybody. She has a mailing list that I think includes the cabs and everybody else that's told her they want to be in on it, and so that goes out to everybody.
Okay.
Does she have to forward us? We get some stuff that I don't even think should be forwarded to us. I mean, why do we get everything? There's some stuff that's,
You don't have to forward everything. You don't have to forward things to Suzanne.
no, the department,
But
I mean, they don't have to forward everything to us. It's, like the color of the moon and stuff
Well-
like that, do they?
I mean, if you're
Should.
on the mailing list, you get it all. I
Yeah,
get
They can
most
always
of it.
delete it.
If you ask to be notified, then you're asking to be notified, and so she forwards, until it becomes overwhelming, and then,
Yeah.
I would just add that if we do forward it to the department, that we shouldn't put Suzanne or anybody at the department in the position of making a decision whether to not to forward it, that they should just automatically forward it.
All right. But you probably don't even want to send your opinion on to Suzanne, because then that makes collusion, even if though it comes through the department, right?
Right.
So,
No smiley faces either, probably.
no frowns, no smiles, no anything. Okay, Commissioner Cavan.
I think I went to one of the trainings down in Las Vegas on the open meeting law, and basically, as I recall, if you want to send something to the other commissioners, if you just ask Suzanne to forward it, and probably to all the mailing lists, and just for your information, end of story, FYI, no comments, no anything, and I think you're pretty clean, but, do you agree with that, Brian?
And/or paranoia is our friend. I'm not paranoid. They really are out to get me. Okay. Heard that from somebody. That was a good quote. All right. Public comment. I'm sorry. Come on up.
Scott, are you going to allow public comment from the CAB during the quota setting or is all?
Yes. Actually, my plan for that, I'll just run that by the commission, is as we go through, where I'd like to run that is we'll like hit antelope, and I'll ask the public comment on the antelope, and then we'll go through that, and then we'll probably do the elk, public comment on elk, and then we'll probably do all the bighorn and goat together, and then we'll have deer, so there'll be 4 different. Otherwise, it gets confusing, and trying to remember what you were talking about on the rear of their species. Okay, public comment.
Paul Dixon speaking as a resident of Clark County. The earlier conversation on forwarding things, I found it frustrating over the last year because I know there's been confusion that Hank had with some of the commissioners of whether they could forward or do things. But if stuff gets to Susan and gets out to the cabs, we can actually look at that correspondence with you and give you meaningful input back from the county on it, rather than coming here, listening to it, and then trying to react as an individual who's representing the cab and giving you comment back on stuff. So I would strongly recommend, if you get correspondence you think is meaningful and you want to discuss at the commission meeting, you forward it to Suzanne, and Suzanne gets it out the cabs. You protect yourself, but it also allows us to have conversation with you one-on-one or other things before we get to here to make sure that we get the right input from our public back to you guys. Thank you.
Further public comment? All right, seeing none, we'll close public comment hearing. At this time, move on to item 34, quota settings. Biologists Mike Cox and Tony Wasley. I'm going to give a little talk about what we're going over here today, gentlemen. I know we've all got the recommendation sheets. We got some additional information from you. Oh, we're also handed out the summary of big game quota recommendations by the advisory boards. Some of these look familiar, a couple of them I haven't seen, must come out later.
Good morning, Mike Cox, game staff biologist, Nevada Department of Wildlife, here with Tony Wasley. Chairman Rain, how do you want to work today's quotas?
Let's go with antelope.
Okay.
If you want to go over the antelope recommendations that you've had here, status of the population recommendations, then
You want me-
we'll ask for public comment, and then we'll back to commission, ask further questions.
You want me to project the table?
Absolutely. You've got it. Yes, go ahead.
I just wonder if we had an extra copy, paper copy of the quota stuff.
Is there an extra paper copy of the quota recommendations?
The one that was in support material.
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't get here with me.
I got it. You need one?
Any extra?
Thank you.
It's awful easy to leave them in the car.
Perfectly spaced.
Anybody else in the commission need any other information before we? Doesn't look like it.
All right, for CR 11-10, we'll start with the pronghorn antelope quota recommendations. And first up is, you want me to provide an overview? You want to do it by hunt?
Let's do an overview of it, and then by hunt. This general population stuff. I know there was quite a bit of stuff in the book I was going over here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much you want to hear about, but pronghorn, mixed bag results, mostly up statewide. Hunter success continues to be good. So I think overall, just using the barometer of the resident rifle 2151 hunt, we're looking at about a 9% increase in tags over last year. And then demand success plays a part in adjustments to the other weapon classes. Muzzleloader hasn't been as much demand as we thought there might be over time. So those tags actually went down because there was much more rifle demand, and then their success rates play a part. We've got pretty decent success rates. Archery didn't go up as much. Only went up about 4% in terms of recommendations. And again, that's the demand success. Just seems like over time we have more rifle demand, more rifle applicants than archery applicants.
Hey, could you give us the 2-minute speech on the demand success formula? I don't know if a couple commissioners that may not have heard, and maybe some people in the audience, just so we.
Sure. Well, the basis is we have to try to find some parity or some basis to try to treat all weapon classes on an even plane based on their characteristics of their hunt and their application rates. So we use the demand from the previous year, 2010, which is a measure of the first choice applicants per unit group, per hunt, per weapon class, plus those that were successful in drawing that unit group regardless of their choice. So say you had 100 applicants for rifle, and those that drew last year for that unit group versus 30 applicants that put in for muzzleloader versus 20 that may have put in for archery. You take those numbers into account, and the greater percentage obviously is the rifle hunters. So they get a initial bigger cut of the demand, which for us equates to how many dead animals are we going to allocate, or how many animals are we going to allocate to that weapon class. So we would if we had $50 that were our harvestable surplus based on buck ratios, objectives, then the majority of those, the demand percentage, 100 out of 150 would go to taking away whatever number that is of the 50, let's say $30. And then that percentage of the muzzleloader of the total demand would then carve away their number of bucks that they could harvest and hunt for, and then archery. And let's say you had 30 bucks allocated to the rifle hunters, then success plays a part in the final demand success formula of how many tags that equates to. So if you have a 50% success rate, then you would divide that into that 30, and you double that, so you'd have 60 tags for the rifle hunters, and you'd use the specific success rates for the muzzleloader, and success rates are a 3-year average, and you just, so that's what happens when you get combination of, let's say, the muzzleloader, a low demand, and a fairly high success rate. You get fewer bucks allocated to your weapon class, and then your success rate's fairly high, so you don't get as many tags. So that's basic the demand success.
All right, just as I know you're referring to that, and I don't know that everybody remembered that, but always good overview. Okay.
But
the only other point I was thinking is...
You got a question?
I had a question. Have you followed that formula then on these recommendations?
Sometimes we do deviate, and based on the policy, if we see a major drop, that is an anomaly, and we have a 3-year average, and we have a major drop, we may just use the previous year's success because it's maybe more representative to now the new situation that's occurring. Maybe we shorten seasons, maybe we lengthen seasons, but the 3-year average really wouldn't accommodate because the season just happened last year or whatever. And so sometimes we do look at that, and then obviously we're always cognizant, especially with archery, when you get a success rate like 0, which a lot of our archery unit groups have, obviously you can't use that. So we'll look back at the history of that unit group. Sometimes it's 2%, sometimes it's 25%, sometimes it's 0%. We may use, one of the years of those 3 years, or we'll use the statewide average for archery. And then we'll also look at the demand from last year. And if there was only 25 people that wanted a tag for a particular archery unit group hunt, and the quota using, 5%, if that was the actual average, 3-year average for success, could inflate the quota to 80 tags or 70 tags. It happens actually more than you think. We'll say, look, we're never going to sell them all. They're going to go unused. So let's try to meet the demand. So knowing that it's 25, and we will look back, it's been pretty consistent. And again, we're not really growing that many archery hunters. So we may adjust that, the demand or the success to potentially shift, try to get close to 25 tags in that archery hunt instead of 85, which we wouldn't even come close to selling. And we might even use the demand to try to shift some of those tags to the other weapon classes.
I thought we weren't going to use statewide quotas on that because that distorts those figures. We were going to use it unit by unit when we worked with the demand success.
Say that again.
I didn't think we were going to use statewide quotas on demand success. We were going to use unit by unit so it doesn't distort it. I thought we were...
I don't quite understand what you said. You said use statewide quotas for demand
Statewide success, I'm sorry. I thought we weren't going to use statewide success with the demand success formula because we're going to use it unit success.
Right, but I just explained that in a situation when you have 0% or 2% success rate, it creates tags off the chart. So you've got to take some common sense and use something to bring reality back into that particular unit group.
So when we run into those cases, do you have them marked or go over some of them?
Tell us.
As they're coming through?
You know, I
Probably
don't.
not. Okay.
I don't, but
Some of these, I know when we were looking at some of these successes, I did see some of these 0% and stuff in here on the charts, and it's like, I was trying to figure out how that would.
yeah,
go
I mean,
into
there's no
demand
system
success.
that's foolproof. You've just got to look for those anomalies and try to treat them as best you can. But if they're close to reality, we don't do anything with them. We let them ride. So sometimes we encourage hunters to pick up a bow, I guess.
So particularly in antelopes, we're talking about antelope. I mean, we're looking down the hunter's success, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4 different units that are all 0. A couple of them are 11%. And then there's even a couple 100%. But even the 100%, would that cause you, in a few cases, to think that was when you've only got 2 tags? Is that actually there's 5. That's under 2161, page A19, is what I'm looking at.
Well, and that's why we use a 3-year average.
Okay.
There's a pretty good chance that, let's say you had 2 tags one year and 3 tags the other year. An average doesn't do justice to a sample size less than 10.
Yeah,
So
a lot of
you
these
could
ones.
go with one person different, 100% one year and 50% the next. So hopefully that's how, and that's why we've been using for, I don't know, 20 years, I guess, 3-year average. But we've always tried to use some common sense when we have those huge fluctuations. But, you know, it's really only about 1% of all the unit group hunts.
So mostly rifle you don't have to do that with.
No, there's very few times. Muzzleloader, sometimes too. The success rate can be low in deer muzzleloader, but typically, really the archery is, and it happens in the small quota unit groups where you have 3 archery bull tags or 2 archery pronghorn tags.
All right.
But overall, the only other thing I can think of is we are using a 90% resident, 10% non-resident split. And it's ultimately based statewide. Deer is the only species where we have a companion non-resident hunt for every resident hunt. When we also have, if it's 1 tag, it's 2 tags. But for antelope and elk and bighorn, we don't have a companion, let's say unit 111 through 114, we may not have a companion archery hunt for that unit group. And so we'll do a 90-10 split for every unit in our recommendations, and then when we're done, we look at the bottom line of the percent of tags going to non-residents by weapon class. And you can see on the screen, for example, here's the resident rifle. This percentage here is the statewide percent of total tags that are going to non-residents for that weapon class. We actually, I think there's a couple unit groups that don't have a non-resident rifle hunt. So we've always had to go back, and this was really, we confronted this, and ever since the Tolman lawsuit, we've been very cognizant to make sure that statewide, that if we don't have a companion unit group for both resident and non-resident, that we're going to have to move some tags in some of the larger unit groups to get a 10% non-resident allocation statewide. Any questions on that? All right.
Okay, all right. So on the
So-
rest of it here on antelope.
That's really, I guess you could,
So when we
there
talk
was a
about,
few comments from the advisory boards.
so when we talk about 21, 51, 61, 81, all those, okay, those are just simply the split. Good. All based upon the split with those bunch of deviations. Yeah, there's got to be some deviations to hunt for success with all these zeros and 7% and success. I don't know how else you do it, otherwise you'd have infinite tags.
Right, and we've made those adjustments where we felt it was necessary with extremely low success rates.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman,
go ahead.
I'd like to ask Mike something. Did you get this handout from the county advisory boards with recommendations that they had for some changes? Did you happen to see it?
You know, I actually make it. I'm the one that does it us all.
That would be a yes.
You may be surprised, but I've been doing this for my entire career as a big game biologist.
I thought this just came, it says wildlife advisory boards.
Right.
So it's like, just for example, the very first line, it says there's a significant change from what your proposed recommendation is to what they're asking for, right?
For like Humboldt County.
041042.
It's not really that significant. They're just shifting tags between the early and late hunts. Not really a big deal. Yeah, I summarize, since the counties, officially can't co-conspire and have, meetings together, because that would violate the open meeting law. We've always summarized all of theirs because it really is hard to keep track of 17 counties and what they're thinking, and so we want to make sure that not only do they know what their neighbors are thinking or what they suggested, then obviously it's important for you to not have to give you a little bit of heads up, and you've got something to refer to with a summary.
Yeah.
All right.
I can't imagine wanting to hunt in a T-shirt, big game. That don't make any sense to me.
All
I like to
right.
hunt when it's snowing.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Commissioner Cavan.
So Mike, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mike, with relation to this summary, these numbers get really confusing here. So the fourth one down, resident antelope, horns longer than ears. The description for any legal weapon doesn't match the hunt number, so I'm trying to figure out what they really wanted. At least in my...
So like for Lincoln County, 221 through 241?
Is that the correct hunt number?
What's the recommendation you're looking at, the specific recommendation?
2161 Lincoln County, it says any legal weapon
Well,
hunt, 2161's the longbow archery hunt.
Yeah, this says longbow archery hunt for hunt 2161.
It is wrong.
This says
Yeah,
any
it's,
legal weapon, so.
yeah.
So is that suggestion
Is it wrong
for,
here?
It's
or is it
wrong on
wrong-
the summary.
Okay, as long as it's wrong on the.
That's the one you
summary, I wanna
made
make
up,
sure
right?
that-
The one you made up.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so
I get assistance.
20 years
Well,
ago.
they all laughed at me, so I
that
figured
is-
I'd turn it around. for
Yes.
20 years
Fair
experience.
play, Commissioner Howell, thank you. That's fair play.
all right. Let's see, hold on, just a second here. I just want to clarify this so I understand this. This Lincoln County recommendation is under 2151. Is that correct, or is it the archery?
It's the archery.
It's the archery, okay. It is archery, got it.
So the number's right.
Archery,
It is
the
for
number
archery, got
is
it.
21.
Number right?
Okay. So
And the
next-
same is true for 2261. That was mislabeled as an illegal weapon, that's
Okay.
the archery.
Down below,
Yeah,
on the Humboldt County,
15 tags, first
Okay.
hunt, 5 tags.
And that is indeed
Archery.
supposed to be archery. Thank you.
Longbow archery.
Okay, anything else, Commissioner Cavan?
Proof read by the commission.
that's all, I've only gone through the envelopes.
Good. Keep us on our toes, man.
I just want everybody to be on the same page.
We'll help each other.
All right, let's go to public comment on this. Public comment, come on up. Mr. Flowers, I can tell you're wanting to stand up. Is that you? No, the guy next to you. Come on up.
We're gonna do the cab, what the cab recommends?
Yes, cab, public, anybody wants to talk about antelope, speak now or forever hold your peace. As they say.
Glenn Copeland, Washoe County Advisory Board. Our board on the resident muzzleloader, Hunt 2171, because the antelope are doing so good in the state, according to the department, and we felt we should deviate from that and go back to the 2010 season numbers it's only 4 tags. I mean, I don't know what the department thinks. I know they were doing the demand success on that, but if you're Joe Hunter that doesn't know what the demand success is out in applying, when you see the resident tags go from 1807 to 1964, and the archery tags go from 489 to 509, and then all of a sudden the muzzleloader tags went from 24 to 20,
It's like,
you're
what?
kind of wondering, what's going on? And the antelope are doing really good in this state, so we felt that Hunt 111 through 114 should go from 5 to 7. Unit group 115, 231, 242 should go from 2 to 3. And unit group 131, 145, 163, and 164 should go from 2 to 4. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody other, let's see, let me make sure I can collate that to my other sheet. 131, 145, from 3 to 4. Okay, go ahead, please.
Michael Gerard with Humboldt County Advisory Board. On areas 041 and 042 for hunts, 2151 and I believe 2251, the non-resident for rifle antelope. We'd like to make some adjustments on the quotas there. We felt that used to be one of the best hunts in the state, and by splitting it, it screwed it up. And so we want to try to salvage what we can and put 97 tags in the first season and 57 in the second season to make the second season a little better quality of a hunt. So many people piled in on each other. And with the non-residents, put 15 in the front and 5 in the second. Thank you.
Okay, can you go over a little of your explanation of that? Of the whys and wherefores and what you guys went over?
Yeah, like I just said, because that used to be one solid season, a nice 15-day season that we strived for years to get a long season, and then they got split, and so now instead of having 2 big circuses out there, just put more tags in the first hunt, so then the second season can still be somewhat of a quality hunt. So you have less people out there, and you still have a quality hunt.
Okay. And how was that to hunt this last year? Do you have any input on it? I mean, with 136 tags?
Personally, I feel that's way too many tags for that unit. I think that unit should have no more than 100 max, in my opinion. But I'm not the biologist. I'm just going by what I see out in the field. So.
Well, that's important information too.
Because I've been fortunate enough to hunt that unit for about the past, almost every year for about not personally, but with family or friends or other people for about the past 10 years now, and it's just the quality of bucks have gone down and down, and the number of antelope, in my opinion, has gone down. Sure, you can go out there in the wintertime when they fly and see 2,000 of them, but that's because they winter in there. A lot of them come in from different areas and winter in there, and then they start heading back to where they came from.
So you think the quotas might even be a bit high, but you didn't make that recommendation to lower the quota?
Well, that's the quota part is my opinion. The rest of the board wanted to leave it like Indow's recommendations. Personally, I think it's too high.
Gotcha. Anybody else have any questions on this? Or? Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Public comment, antelope. Antelope, pronghorn. Come on up. Will that be it, or anybody else coming up?
Shane Bourne, White Pine County Cab. The only one we had was 078, 105 to 107 in Unit 121. The write-up in the books shows a 17% population decline, and the quota is increasing from 35 to 53, and we had a concern over that with the population decline.
All right, hold on, let's see. 078, recommend 39 tags. It was 35 last year, went to 53, so recommendation's 39. Oh. Okay, question? Go ahead.
Shane, this must be a misprint that Thomas sent me, because it says, he wrote down that it dropped from 1,200 to 100 animals.
No, I just went from the write-up in the back, and it showed a 70% and
70% drop in numbers.
17% drop in numbers on the Endow's write-up.
Thomas must
No,
have
I think that was a typo.
Any other questions, Commission? Okay. Go ahead. But
So anyway, starting with Glenn Copeland, you know, the demand success, it's a good place to start. But, you know, a minor adjustment like you wanted for muzzleloader, it's really not a big deal. The 041, 042 herd has been growing steadily, starting to level off a little bit, but that population is still doing really strong. Good fawn recruitment the last few years, and we're continuing to, you know, fill that the mature buck segment with all that fawn recruitment the last 3-4 years. In terms of buck ratios, it's probably one of the highest in the state. People are certainly having great hunts out there in terms of success. There certainly is a little competition out there in the field by the hunters, but it's a large pronghorn herd. Had 83% success last year in the rifle. You know, we're just trying to use the same standard of buck ratio there as most of the state. And that herd, although it was established from colonization of pronghorn from the north, pretty close population today. So 41, 42 is a huge area, but we're not aware of any movement back into Humboldt County to the north, say into 3.2 or 3.5. So we're pretty confident that our surveys reflect that population and not segments of another one. And the 078 unit group pronghorn herd, our population estimate the last couple years, we've had some challenges trying to figure out in relation to the survey numbers, and we may have some movement there between a couple unit groups. We are showing a 7% decrease, but last year, 2 years ago, the buck ratio was high. We had a poor survey this last year. We really felt that we were underutilizing that herd. I think the estimate, you know, over 1,000 animals. And when you look at all the other unit groups, you know, 53 tags is much more in line. But again, we didn't have the greatest survey, so 53, 39, you know, it's not a huge deal. But we really do feel that the bucks are out there. But if you guys want to accept that White Pine County recommendation, there's no sword for us to fall on there.
hopefully no swords anywhere today. It's
just blunt butter knives.
Slow cuts.
All right. Any further public comment? Seeing none, we'll close public comment on the antelope and the pronghorn seasons here. I think we're there. Back to the commission. Go ahead, Commissioner Capurro.
Okay, Mike, let me see if I have this correct. The estimated population for the state is 27,000 animals, all-time high according to the hunt book. It's an increase of 4% from last year, and the 35 fawn, 100 doe split is basically what allowed for that, or provided for that increase. So you've pretty much matched the increase in the population with the increase in the tags. Is that correct? Because the tag increase figures out to be about 4.95% overall.
Overall weapon classes.
So
Yeah,
that's pretty much in balance with the increase in the population.
Well, and this will probably come up with the other species, and that's why we actually generate a computer model, because one piece of data, one parameter, doesn't reflect the entire population. So in this case, last year's fawns were actually not as good as the 2009 crop.
Right.
So 35 fawns per 100 doe pronghorn certainly provides for growth, as we did show. But that growth, those fawns are yearling bucks this year. Legally, yearling bucks cannot be harvested. They typically have a 6-7 inch horn, and the horn has to be above the ears. So you can't necessarily look at the population estimate and see if that grew, then you should be able to have increases in buck tags. It doesn't really work that way. What's creating the increase in buck tags is the fawn recruitment from the last 2, 3, even 4 years. And that's where the computer models take that into account, and they recreate that population, if you remember the exercise I did a few months ago. And so bucks born in 2007, will be 4 years of age. 3 and 4 years of age pronghorn bucks are typically your mature bucks that are reaching their prime. So that really was why we have the increase we have this year. And then as this fawn class moves through the population, it'll provide hunting opportunities in 2012 and 2013.
Okay, but my overall comments are correct then, that the number one, population at an all-time high at 27,000. 4% increase in the population, primarily due to a pretty good fawn-doe ratio compared to the past, and that your tag recommendations are pretty close. It's 4.95% of above last year, so they're pretty much all in sync. That was all I was trying to get. Thank you.
And we're just pretty excited. I think you talk to some of our biologists that have retired. I don't think they would have ever thought we would have been over 25,000 ever.
Mr. Vice Chairman?
I had a question. In the book, under antelope, it said that populations are at record levels, and you continue to monitor and keep them in check with proper carrying capacity of the range. How do you monitor carrying capacity? How do you define it, or what are you doing? You're monitoring with carrying capacity. Can you explain that?
There's a lot of variables involved. It's a different scenario. I can give you a couple examples. And most of them, actually both of these involve fire. They also involve some obstacles to winter ranges. In Humboldt County, we've had a lot of fires in Area 3, and that sagebrush component was pretty much wiped out. And we certainly have been working with the BLM to restore some of that rangeland. Sagebrush was seeded, forage kochia was seeded, but as we see in a lot of elevations in the 4,000 to 6,000 feet elevation, sagebrush recovery is pretty tough. The forage kochia, on the other hand, has been doing well, provides a great resource for all wildlife and livestock out there on the range. And we know that there's been consistent wintering areas because of snow loads, aspects, south aspects, where if we have that forage kochia that those pronghorn are highly dependent on, we don't have another browse component out there for winter browse. We're out there assessing that forage kochia, and a lot of it's ocular, just like a bootstrap method of going out there and measuring forage availability or forage density or forage species, just like in any other range consultant would do. So we're out there just assessing generally the condition of that forage kochia. You can tell what's been browsed, what hasn't been. And, if there's a pretty good proponent of that's been browsed down, and there's other things out there. There's cattle during the summer months, through the fall, and we're concerned about that forage base, and we're probably going to look at our doe hunts to try to reduce that local population. Another example, in Area 6, and I know Ken Gray's here, he could probably speak to the challenges and some of the measures that he's had to assess carrying capacity from historic how the winter summer ranges were used by pronghorn to the current situation where we have fires that have had huge impacts, restoration efforts that we're working with the BLM to try to keep those animals from not overexploiting those seedlings first few years, along with some huge impacts from urbanization. The interstate highway has always been and continues to be a major block when the snow gets real deep. So we assess some general parameters, and for example, we had a big capture last year, and we either use a capture event or harvest for those units. And it's not all the units in the state. It's probably just a handful that we're concerned about.
So you can capture animals out of that and transplant them if you have what you consider a decreased carrying capacity?
Well, we know, we know historically, you go back 20 years and we see what that population has done, and we know when the snow gets X deep, they pile up, and then we see that population decline. We've seen it several times. So not only from the characteristics of the landscape, whether it's urbanization or lack of forage from fires, we also see that population respond by having higher mortality through the winter. And through those experiences, we've built up an understanding not only of the resources on the ground, but the reaction of the herd to what is the capacity of that range to support X number of animals.
Sort of ambiguous then,
This question here, I was looking at you've observed a total of, let's see, so it's total, what was the total observed? You observed, on pronghorns, observed 10,275 pronghorn for a population estimate of 27,000 animals, which makes it, you observed, which figures about 30%, 38% of the whole full population. Is that, normal numbers, you're going to see that percentage of the population? Is that a...
Depends on your methods. If we were to use...
Well, on these methods being utilized, which I assume, there's not much helicopter using this, it's mostly ground observation, right?
There's actually probably about 25 to 35% of our herds are classified by helicopter.
Okay.
A lot of those areas are hard to get to by ground. But the majority of our herds are classified by the ground. So that really does limit our observability when we're forced to drive on 2 tracks and glass with spotting scopes. So if we were to have eye in the sky, we'd probably see a greater percentage of the population.
But just, looking over the different species, and how many of the estimated populations are actually observed, it's, interesting that, and I don't know how relevant it really is, but maybe you can elucidate on me, is like about 17% of the actual estimated deer population is observed, 38% antelope, 68% of the elk population is observed, 47% of bighorn, desert, 43 California. Just seems like interesting numbers. I mean, we actually see 68% of the elk population that's out there.
And a lot of it is not only the method, but it's how much effort you put into it. Just like how much effort you put into hunting. If you're willing to hunt hard, get off the road, your success rate goes up.
And I looked at the previous years, and these are similar. They'd gone up and down, the percentages some, but they're relatively representative of what I saw in the last 2 years' data. There was a little aberration, but...
And that's a very good observation, and that speaks to the consistency of our methods and our efforts by species.
But
we've always been, for example, elk, people, I was going to say we're sensitive, but I think other people have created our sensitivity to know where elk are and how many there are. And so you talk to any biologist and he'll flat out tell you, he probably puts more effort into his elk surveys than most of his other species, just because it's always on the radar screen. So we definitely, proportionally, probably put more effort into elk, although we do fly some of our deer herds twice a year, but we only fly elk once a year. But when we do, we really try to, and we've been increasing, especially in Elko County, airtime to classify elk. So that's why you see a greater proportion of those, of the total population that are sampled.
Yes, I mean, that's huge. It's amazing that you could come up with thinking a guy could actually see 68% of a population of animals, and a lot of them live in timber, and I mean, that just...
Nevada's not timbered.